Well, we have a licensed cheese-making operation here. We're a farmstead cheesemaker, which means we have the animals and milk the animals and make cheese from our own milk. Every year as you increase your number of animals, that complicates life and makes things more difficult to keep the kind of numbers where you need them from a regulation point of view. Specifically, that's mastitis.
Because she's a producer-dealer, it's required that a monthly pooled sample be taken. A high somatic cell in one animal in a small herd could have a large impact on the overall pooled sample that I take monthly.
So finding a tool that would be useful on an on-farm basis to predict when problems might be starting with an udder was really exciting to me. But there's very little out there that's specifically for the goat or that's been tested for the goat.
Liz came to me with the idea that she wanted to pursue a grant as far as developing her own way of analyzing her herd health. And I said, you know, whatever I can do to help you with that, it's no problem.
It would be nice if there was a device you could use right on the farm and test individual animals to determine maybe if there's one or two animals that are throwing your bulk tank off. In my research, I discovered a device that's used in the dairy cow industry to measure the electrical conductivity of the milk, which would give you an immediate reading, which could be indicative of subclinical mastitis. So the theory would be that this device would help a farmer do it right at the point of the milking. One more. So the grant that I wrote was to study using the Mazdetech and compare those results every month to actual tests of the milk that get sent off to a laboratory. I will get a reading of actual somatic cell count, actual butter, fat, and protein, if and what pathogens might be in fact causing an infection and that therefore increasing the somatic cell count. Every time I get the results back, I put it into a program I set up for each goat, and that will just sort of map out all of those numbers. And when I get those results, I expect I will sit down with Alex McDonald, who is my technical advisor, and talk about whether that information is really useful. And had those numbers been something I was working with right along in any normal year versus a year where I'm doing it for grant purposes, would I have made decisions about treating animals or culling animals? Or would that have actually affected my overall bulk milk tank? So in other words, is it really useful for people in the goat milking industry as opposed to the cow?
Bridging the gap between the regulatory and the farmer is one that sometimes takes time. They have to develop a confidence with each other as to, you know, we're a friend, we're not your foe. You know?
Alex is kind of an unusual inspector in that he isn't just doing his inspection and checking his lists.
Initially, what really drove my interest to Liz is her willingness to assist other farmers within the region so that it wasn't just her economic growth, it was theirs.
When I spoke with Alec about the Mazdetech and the fact that I was going to try for this grant, he was actually really excited because if it proved useful, it would be something that he could share with other people that are in his jurisdiction across the state.
You know, I have a job to do as a regulator, but also I want you to become good at what you do and to become, you know, hopefully become the standard, a gold standard of what good farming is. Everybody shares what they have, they contribute to each other's growth, and everybody succeeds together.
You can tell people you have a farm, you hay, but as soon as you tell them you have a vineyard, everything changes. Kind of like a hobby gone wild. So now it's not a hobby, it's a commercial product right now.
John came to me at one of our council meetings and says, geez, George, what can I grow that I won't be in competition with other growers, but I want a product that the consumer wants? And, you know, we were chatting back and forth, and I said, have you ever thought of table grapes? And he says, okay, if we do it, what should I plant? And I looked at John and said, I really don't know. There's never been a real good study in New England of looking at seedless table grapes and comparing all the different types of seedless table grapes.
What we wanted to do was give a really good idea to all other farmers that want to grow seedless table grapes. And you don't have to be an expert to walk down these aisles and figure out, I wouldn't grow those, but I grow those. Oh, this is an absolute beautiful cluster right here.
We have 9 vines of each variety, all 16 varieties that we can use for comparison of growth patterns and how fast they come into production. We are looking at soluble solids to see how sweet the grapes are.
Did you find them really sweet?
Yeah.
You know, this is a joint venture between the two of us. John asked the question and I'll try to find an answer. And
one of the questions I had was, why are my leaves yellow?
As a problem occurs, we sit down and try to come up with a plan and try to address it. And by having the SARE grant, it's helped us see what is going to be adapted here.
I'm Ruth Hazard. I work with UMass Extension in the vegetable program.
Zoe, everything I want to get picked out of here. That looks even a little color.
And if it's cracked, don't pick it because it might have spotted wing in it.
Oh, yeah.
I do a lot of work with integrated pest management, including a lot of different models that rely on temperature for disease and insect life cycles, outbreaks, and so on. So when I was approached by Larry Manier and Dan Kaplan to work on this project with them, I was very interested.
About 2 years ago, last June, I was on an airplane, had my copy of Wired, and they had an article on wireless sensor networks. So I got interested and realized they would have application for farming, and my daughter was assistant manager at Brookfield Farm at the time.
He wanted to know if we thought they'd be useful on the farm. And so he bought one and he set it up and he showed us, and then we just talked about whether it would be useful, and we said, well, maybe.
This is a sensor in the field that will be in various places around the farm, and this tiny little chip right here is a temperature humidity sensor, and it sits on top of our basic board, which has a microprocessor and a radio. So the information, when it comes into the computer, then is immediately uploaded to the internet, into the cloud. We have a program called RT Cirrus that allows you to display all that information.
What I bring is the experience using weather data and weather monitoring systems and some ways of reporting those data out that are useful for vegetable growers. So just kind of bringing another angle on how we can use the data that the wireless systems collect.
I keep Larry grounded in the field of reality and give him some feedback about what worked and what didn't, and help him figure out how to put the sensors in such a way that, you know, we don't run over them with tractors, things like along those lines.
I notice farmers tend to farm by the seat of their pants, based on experience. They know what works and so forth, but they haven't had a way of quantifying it. And Dan now, for the first time, is seeing some quantification, particularly with regard to soil moisture and air temperature in microclimate kind of situation.
Let's say temperature's going to get down to 31 degrees, and we want to irrigate our peppers right when it gets to 33 so that we stop them from freezing. I used to just have to wake up almost every hour or two and just guess when the temperature would go down and drive out to the field. Now I can the sensor just sends an email right to my phone, which gives me a little message that says the temperature just went below 33.5. Then I can get up and start the irrigation. So that saves me a lot of time. That's a really useful thing.
Initially, it started with a conservation innovation grant and talking to the state agronomist about potential for no-till establishment of cover crops directly into ASOD. We just flail mowed, scalped the field here to suppress the sod a little. In our second year of that replication, we put in the Farmer Grower Grant with SARE to help with that project. I think Rich came on just as we were finishing up the first year of the replicated trials, and it fit right in with Rich's agroecology background. So it was no-till hairy vetch followed by skim-till.
Okay, so skim till.
So we skim-tilled the hairy vetch in with the rotavator and then planted the corn and into that, and that was it.
Wow.
So we got, what, 10 feet?
I'm 6'3", so I'm really interested in how agricultural communities function, and so what Dorn is looking at and interested here is really an attempt to kind of manipulate the agricultural community. So the community being the hay sod and all the plant species that are part of that, then the hairy vetch, and so it becomes somewhat of a question about intercropping and community interactions, and so that's really in line with what my interests are.
And add that, I mean, it was a really good fit because I was interested in the applied piece of it, but by partnering with Rich, he's able to take the same work that we did to get the simple applied result and collect another layer of data, which is going to be useful in a much more fundamental way. From my perspective, the farmer-TA relationship was especially important in getting feedback on plot design and approach, setting up the randomized block design especially, and talking through what the mechanisms are, what we should be paying attention to.
For me, it's just been a great opportunity as a new faculty coming in to have a project that's on the ground and a collaborator that's willing and enthusiastic, and it's a rich data set to be able to dive into, and it's really an opportunity for me to learn some of the critical issues that folks are interested in, and a springboard for additional collaborations. It really ended up being a nice synergistic relationship between Dorn's project and some of my interests, which has really helped to expand kind of the impact of the project. Cool. Yeah, we've got lots of experiments in our future with this guy.